Only Murders in the Building is back this week with episode 6 of season 4, and we're officially now past the halfway point in the season. With the show's most stylistic and creative approach being this feature, I have nothing but respect for the fact that they shook things on its head in terms of the execution of the episode and the developing of the plot. It's exactly what a show like this needs to remain exciting, and boy, it was exactly that. With Dudenoff's identity being revealed and it seeming like Charles, Oliver and Mabel are the next targets of the killer following it being revealed that this person has in fact killed twice before. Let's delve into the episode, look at the themes and discuss all that there was to take away from it. Here is Only Murders in the Building Season 4 Episode 6 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Like with most of the episodes of this season of the show, the title of this episode was named after a film that had a very similar theme to what the installment was about, Blowup. Blowup was a movie that was made in 1966, which is a psychological mystery that's about a young and successful fashion photographer who took photos at a park. And then once looking at the photos, he realized that he might have snapped photos that contained evidence of a murder that took place. It centers around the theme of the hidden truth that a camera can pick up. This is something that was explored within this episode of the show, with the fact that Tawny and Trina were always told to keep on shooting by their film studies professor, which turned out to be Dudenoff. This is why there were a load of different cameras around the studio and also within Mabel, Charles and Oliver's apartments, because they wanted to capture a multi-dimensional version of the truth, which can only be done through the lens of a camera. This connection to film was something that occurred in last week's episode as well, especially the fact that Meryl Streep even starred in that movie, so I'm keeping that in mind when looking at how the story's developing. The ending explained. During this episode, there were actually a ton of revelations. For example, we found out that the Dudenoff that we came to know and understand wasn't in fact the person that we thought he was. Dudenoff had in fact been dead for a little while. This means that the Dudenoff that was in Portugal and was sending the leg of meat back to the residents in the West Block wasn't actually the Dudenoff that Trina and Tawny knew. Dudenoff had the same Bulgarian bone replacements that Sazz had, and due to there being 2 left shoulders in Sazz's box of remains, after identification, one turned out to be Professor Dudenoff. This could mean one of 2 things. The people in the West Tower never knew of the real Dudenoff and they were being played by somebody that was cashing checks under his name. Or they did know him, and it points right back to the residents in that block as being responsible for the death of Dudenoff, and the whole pretending he's in Portugal was something that they made up. The fact that checks were being cashed in the same city that they lived in. Could they have killed him and their motive have been to maintain living cheaply in that apartment block? Vince and Rudy responded in a shocked way when Charles mentioned how Dudenoff was back in the city. They made out like he would have visited them, so he couldn't have been there. But could that have just been them making out like they knew he wouldn't be there because they were responsible for his death? This could have also given them motive to try and kill the trio in the opposite building because they would have known that they always solve their murders and snoop around and dig out the truth. So they may have wanted to have taken them out and made them the next targets because that way their plan would have been pretty secure and they wouldn't have been found out. It's a new theory for now, as per usual. All new episodes tend to strike up new theories, but I think it's looking like Sazz could well have been a target as well as Charles, Mabel and Oliver, rather than it just being a mistaken identity of Charles. Vince is connected to the brothers' sisters as well, so there is still that connection of it being involved with the production. The show likes to lead us down multiple different pathways and directions in order to make us question what it could actually be. Whilst the theory around the residents is being struck up again, there is still a strong case for it being somebody in the production company. Trina and Tawny are kind of ruled out of the picture now because the shoe print was cleared up by them confirming that they were in Dudenoff's apartment because they were visiting him. But with Sazz snooping around and having that revelation for Charles that we still haven't heard about yet, the project of the film could have been in jeopardy. Professor Dudenoff didn't like the fact that the brothers' sisters were involved in the project in LA and had moved so far away from their original storytelling approach. So what if he was also involved in looking to take down the production, maybe just like how Sazz was, and that could have led to his death as well? We don't know how long he's been dead for, but the brothers' sisters haven't seen him for 3 years, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's been gone for that amount of time. With there being hidden cameras that were placed around the trio's apartments, it makes me think that the person that put them there would need to know where they lived and also have access to get inside. To get into Mabel's, they would have needed to have known the code, which already whittles it down to a select few, so there are 2 lines of suspects there. Realistically, now, seeing as though Sazz's phone was turned on and sending messages, they should go to the police and get it tracked down straight away, but I'm guessing that's not going to happen. With Zach being shot due to a ricochet of the bullet, we saw that the window had the exact same markings on it, so the killer was the same person and they used the same murder weapon. With Mabel, Charles and Oliver leaving the city because they felt as though they were in danger, it's going to be interesting to see what's exactly going to happen next. The next episode is titled Valley of the Dolls, and that was a movie that was released in 1967, so I'm intrigued to see which themes from that movie they'll bring into the next episode. My review of the episode. I thought this was a really good installment of the show, definitely one of my favourites. I thought the creative execution was really exciting, and the switching between different types of cameras from across the ages and also surveillance made for a real fly-on-the-wall experience. I almost felt like we got to see a different side to the trio, an unedited, unfiltered version that really came across well. The 4-act structure made the episode extremely easy to follow and made the short runtime actually feel elongated. Compared to last week, this episode was levels above what we had. I also thought this episode probably contained some of the funniest moments in the entire season as well. Oliver being so aware of the camera when in reality he should have been ignoring it was just perfect, and so Oliver. Howard switching loyalties and going back to the trio made for a funny moment, and Charles and Mabel being frustrated by Howard for the entire episode was just constantly making me laugh. In terms of the performances, I thought they were really strong this week. I'm glad we got to see more of the brothers-sisters because I felt like we hadn't really spent much time with them. But this really allowed us to understand them a little bit more than before, and their cold, artistic approach was a contrast to the animation that we often see from Charles and Oliver. As per usual, the trio were in top form, but seeing them having fear within them for the first time made a bit of a change, and they handled it well. With the previous seasons of the show, it always felt like there were some clues that you could kind of latch onto and really run away with. But this time round, there's so much that changes during every episode that you never really know which way you're going. Throughout this season, I felt like Vince could have been the killer, the brothers-sisters could have been, Sazz could have faked her death, and even Glenn could have been the murderer. I'm all over the place, but I think that's when you know you've got a good murder mystery, because even though there's been a fair few clues, none of them are quite adding up yet. My mind is just like Charles's 3 murder boards. It doesn't make sense, but one thing I do know is that I'm really enjoying the ride. It's shaping up to be a really strong season, one of the best, and I can't wait to see how the case is going to get resolved. So, there you have it. Only Murders in the Building Season 4 Episode 6, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on Only Murders in the Building, then click on the card in the top corner. There's an entire playlist there where I break down every episode. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll catch you in the next one.